being receptive to feedback. That's the biggest one by far. It doesn't matter what you're doing or how you're doing it. The better I got at feedback, and this is later in my career, the better I got at accepting feedback, no matter what the context is, no matter if it's somebody yelling at me about something I messed up or otherwise, like, the quicker I evolved. There's a whole huge portion of what goes into making a career out of music that's not the art that you're making. It's how you're presenting it and who you're presenting it to and where you're presenting it and all these different things that it really does require a well-rounded understanding of the whole picture that's beyond making music and recording it and producing it.
All right, so here we are with Ari Fink. So for everyone out there listening, Ari here, he's the Senior Director of Music Programming for SiriusXM. He's worked on the Grateful Dead channel, Jam On, Pearl Jam Radio, Phish Radio, Dave Matthews Band Radio, and he's designed and launched Nugsnet Radio now recently, a new channel dedicated to live music on the SiriusXM app. And yeah, Ari, he's also a widely acclaimed interviewer. So kind of ironic for me to be interviewing him on the show. Stoked about that. Ari, man, glad to have you here. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I love the kind words. Thank you so much. Acclaimed might be a bit of a stretch. I still got some work to do, but every day just trying to get a little bit better. My gig has found me in some pretty wild conversations, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, excited to reminisce on those here. But hey, man, so to start this off, as like a curator of music, I'd love to hear you talk about, you know, we mentioned Grateful Dead music, Phish Radio, like, and the other types of music you're involved in. Like, what about them have you come to love so much? Like, what about this specific world of music that we're involved in?
Well, initially it was just the adventurousness, the going against the grain, not sounding like anything else. You know, anything could happen at any moment. Spontaneously creating on the fly with other people, the aspects of collaboration that go into improvisation. And the longer that I've been involved on this side of the fence, I mean, I'm more and more impressed and blown out by the preparation and the practice and the commitment to the craft that people don't see, and that goes into really being able to have a musical conversation on a deep level with other people. Because one might think that you can just jump into a room and grab an instrument and everyone's talking by playing together, and it's so much more complicated than that and more challenging than that. And so being able to learn about the preparation that goes into it and the approach and the philosophy, it has really expanded my whole perspective of what all these artists do.
And yeah, and so going down that rabbit hole, I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about, you know, some of the most memorable, eye-opening interviews you've gotten to do, and just like, what about them has stuck with you?
Well, it's a hard question to answer. I mean, part of my gig is recording content with these artists, and always has been. And you know, from the jump when I started programming Jam On, I don't know, 10 years ago, before there was a Phish Radio and a Dave Matthews Band Radio, you know, bringing artists into the studio and playing their new music and chatting with them about their songwriting approach has really been one big part of what I do. And there have been so many conversations, and now at this point, you know, my interviews are somewhat specific when it comes to the guys in Phish and the guys in Dave Matthews Band. That's my current focus. There have been so many good and bad. Honestly, the train wrecks stay with me more than anything else, and like the missteps are where I continue to kind of glean information from and learn from, more so than the more successful and appreciated ones. So like, personally, it's, you know, there are many, but I've certainly learned a ton from the guys in Phish and Dave Matthews Band as conversationalists. Dave Matthews is one of the most hilarious dudes of all time, and he's also incredibly self-deprecating. He's viciously committed to songwriting and music as art, and he is always interested in zigging if you're zagging in a conversation. Like, he's done so many interviews and he's been through so much media. He's done so much of it that it's always amazing just to open up the mic and get rolling with him, because you never know what's going to happen. He's going to start talking about his kids, or he's going to start talking about this one time where somebody on his crew forgot a wig, and you're so far from where you started, and it's always a lesson in tying things together, because it's hilarious. And Trey is the same way, and Fishman as well. I mean, those guys, and all the guys in Phish, Paige and Mike, I mean, everyone brings their own unique personality to conversations. But beyond those guys, I mean, I've always loved chatting with the dudes in Vulfpeck, and I started playing them on the radio a long, long time ago, and got a chance to get to know those guys and bring them into the studio and cut sessions, and they're always hilarious. Talking to them about their whole Sleepify thing way back in the day was just amazingly entertaining, at least to me. I mean, it's such a stunt, and it's so interesting to pull back the curtain with those dudes. Chris Robinson is another one who is just incredibly funny and sharp, and doesn't really give a fuck that much about, promoting this or that, or minding his P's and Q's. And so that's really fun for sure. But, I've had some awkward conversations too, and I've certainly have learned from them. And it's always interesting, because sometimes you're thrown in the mix, and like, we've never met in person up until now. I'm glad to be chatting with you, but it's not easy. Tell them, Cam,
Yeah, there's margin for error. You try to at least make some. We get to edit these post-production, so lucky for us, there's no blooper reels out there. No, I'd love to put like a microscope on that. Like, it can be so nuanced, the different sections of an interview, getting it, going, like rapport at the beginning, and then, let's say you have a deeper question, kind of how one might make that appropriate to bring up. I'd love to hear from you,
Sure.
like missteps and all, like what mistakes you've really like learned from.
Well, first of all, flow is everything. I mean, anyone who likes improvisation and who appreciates, crafting a story or building an arc, as much as I'm hesitant to use that phrase, but like, the flow is everything. And so it doesn't matter what you're doing. Like, if you come out swinging with some question that's not, in the person's comfort zone, obviously it's not going to go great. And so there's a lot of warming up to that person, making them feel comfortable, making them feel secure in the moment and confident in the moment. I mean, an interviewer's job is basically like, to be the T in T-ball. Like, you're not, it's slow pitch softball. And even the difficult questions, like, even more so, need to just be like, like, you can't be off the plate at all if you're expecting a swing at a question like that. I was talking to and recording with Joseph Gordon-Levitt once, who's a big Phish fan, and had never met him. He was promoting a movie, but he likes Phish, and he did a guest DJ, and then he was on my show as a preview. Super nice guy, to be expected, incredibly smart, quick with it, like, doesn't miss a beat, and his pacing and his rhythm are just unparalleled. I mean, it's what he does, right? It's all part of what he does. And the first few minutes of our Zoom, I noticed that he had a kid's drum kit, like he had a Questlove Pocket kit, right? It's a drum kit designed for under 10-year-olds. I happen to have one down here to my right as well. And first thing I asked him about, not on the air, but right off the jump, was that. Started talking about our kids, started talking about getting them into music, and, it just completely set the scene at ease, and also hopefully like made him feel comfortable and confident in what we were trying to do, to the point where my kid actually showed up in the interview while we're rolling. Like, while I'm talking to him, my son, who I'd mentioned, like, walks down here. He's like, oh, hey, who are you? And without missing a beat, he's like, oh, hey, Harrison, what's going on? Like, boom, right in it. Like, not even, like, thinking twice. It was amazing. I mean, it's so, like, what could have been, like, a needle scratch moment was actually so amazing on every level.
I like that. I like that. I'm interested, like, what are some of the most interesting questions you have in your bag of tricks? Like, what questions do you most love to get the answer to when, you bring up baseball, like when you're swinging for the fences, I guess, as the T?
Well, it depends. Everything is case dependent. Every scenario is different. Every person has a different story and a different history and a different frame of reference and a different, sort of view of themselves. So there's no blanket at all. I mean, every single time that I go into a conversation, it's the first interview I've ever done, in that I'm preparing specifically for that conversation. And the reason is that I can sit here and throw a bunch of general questions at the wall and I'll get some answers. But, like, is it a conversation that speaks to the moment, like, in that point in time? Because ultimately that's what we try to do with the radio, whether we're live at a show and we're broadcasting and it's like in the moment going out to air. No matter what, no matter where we are, it's always put people in that moment in time. Not, it's kind of one of the big differences between a podcast and live radio is, like, we're speaking to that exact moment. And so the blanket questions aren't really necessarily part of what I bring to the table, at least anymore. And then additionally, I'll say that, like, beyond the music, which, listen, I'm a huge music nerd and I'll geek out with any of these guys as long as they'll let me, and contextualize all the things that they do musically and the what's and the whys and the hows and the whens. But beyond that, lifestyle questions and talking, these people are not just their music, right? They're people too who have families and they have experiences and interests that go beyond music. And so I've honestly found, especially over the last 5 years, that some of that stuff actually goes harder and is more entertaining and more compelling and more interesting than the music stuff. And it's also appreciated by people because they're used to getting asked music questions. And yeah, we're here to talk about our music, but at the same time, it humanizes them when you're rounding out, the subject matter.
Wow. And I love what you say about staying true to the moment and not having, like, an agenda. That's definitely a challenge for any artist. Like, we have our routines. And even I feel like that's one of the things I love most about, the world of music we're in, is kind of releasing agendas to a degree at certain times. I love that.
For sure. And part of the preparation is, like, yeah, I'm going to create a roadmap. I'm going to have topics. I'm going to have bullets. I'm going to have ideas for how I'm going to phrase things. And then once things get started, whoop, like, it's out the window. And one thing Trey told me a long time ago.
Well, if you made it this far, thank you for listening. Just want to let y'all know we've got these hand-dyed, ice-dyed Weird Music Podcast tees, and we're also going to be making some sweatshirts, so if you'd like one, let us know. We'd love to get you one. Also want to give a big shout out to the geniuses over at Thrax CBD for sponsoring this show with their amazing products. Got a link in the description. Also, big thank you to our sponsor, J&J Distribution, Ohio's premier CBD and Delta 8 wholesale supplier. Retailers, check out their brands Kush Burst, 3Chi THC Edibles, and CBD MD. And also want to give a big thank you to our local print shop, Franklinton Press. If you need any custom merch or custom printing, hit them up. They'll take good care of you. We got links in the description. And yeah, much love, y'all. Now back to the show.
About his music, which was very, very impacting, was that there's way more preparation and rehearsal and thoughtful commitment to precision than is seen by the audience, and then there's way more abandon from it than is believed on both sides of the coin.
Mm.
And that always stayed with me because it's like such an amazing way to go into something, no matter whatever craft it may be. It's like I'm gonna have my recipe dialed. I'm gonna like have my mise en place. I'm gonna like have all my ingredients, and then I'm tasting. And wait a minute, like it needs a little of this, or here we go. We're running off the map. Like that's life, and I never forget the that kind of approach.
Have you ever had like reservations about kind of getting to know artists that you may just like admire and love so much, and then kind of breaking that fan artist dynamic to be, it seems like you've had a lot of conversations with these guys.
I don't know about reservations being the right word, but I hear what you're saying, and certainly the dynamic for me personally has changed quite a bit, and my fandom is much different now. It's shifted, like it's anything shifts in life. Like you're not going to be the 14-year-old that first fell in love with this music when you're 24 or 34 or 44. So there are, I don't really like lament that at all because things evolve and this is how they've evolved for me, and I'm like completely blown out on a daily basis that this is how they've evolved for me, and it's a wild seat to be in. And by and large, I have the amazing fortune of working with with artists who are even better people than they are artists. I mean, the whole don't meet your heroes thing, while I'm very sure is real for many and for like specific people and specific genres, every single person, that we work with happens to just be incredibly kind and patient and empathetic and thoughtful in their own way. I mean, no one's going to come at it, like the same. Everyone's different, right? Everyone has their own way of showing it, but I'm really fortunate to work with the artists that I do because they're all incredibly stand-up humans.
Mm. So outside of your work and your career, I'm curious what growth and improvement like looks like for you at this point.
What growth and improvement looks like for me. That's a really great question, and it's a hard question, but I think for me, I mean, I have a 5 and a 7-year-old. I have a wife who's starting her own business, who has started a few different businesses in the real estate and design world. And I think for me, it's all about balance and compartmentalizing and being able to put 1,000% into every bucket at the moment that I'm like focusing on it, because the radio doesn't turn off. I mean, nobody's looking for dead air. I mean, my phone blows up if that happens like crazy. People start calling, people start yelling. Like it's not a pretty scene. And beyond that, like that's a worst case scenario. But the point being is like just trying to really fully immerse myself outside of work in family stuff and life stuff and vacation, whatever even if it's 3 hours on a hike in the afternoon, like not checking my phone or like responding to an email or whatever the case may be. I mean, that's really where I've tried to put as much focus as I could recently. And then also not being as hard on myself and just kind of like letting things happen and understanding that life's not perfect, and the best hitters ever like barely cracked 400. 350 is amazing. Like that, those are things where growth, I used to get really, really bent out of shape about little details and things when they wouldn't go perfectly. And so being able to let that stuff go has been a big part of that too.
Mm. And I'd love to hear you talk about like leadership and what you've come to understand is like the most important qualities when being a leader.
Okay. Let's see. There's a lot. I mean, patience, providing an opportunity for people, uh, explaining the process, getting into the how and the why, not just beforehand or during, but afterwards, is a big one. And when you're trying to put something complex together, in any context, there are a ton of steps, and the perspective isn't necessarily seen from the 50,000 feet by everyone. But being able to have the patience and the foresight to go back, map out where the missteps were, what you can do better, and assess everything with your team is just, I can't tell you how important it is, and how much it impacts the future efforts that everybody's going to make, because the lessons learned, the more you spend trying to figure out what those lessons learned are and where the hits and misses were, the more it's naturally going to just boost everybody's understanding and confidence in the future. And I think, trying to raise the tide overall instead of doing, as much on your own is a huge thing. Giving people an opportunity to take on responsibilities or tasks or, projects that they're not necessarily ready for, and figuring things out on their own is a huge thing. And, just having a really empathetic view of what people are doing. And at the end of the day, if people are working really hard and they're committed to the vision, then that's enough of what matters, that the rest will eventually, come along.
Mm.
And there's a ton more, I'm sure, that that's not coming to mind right now, but it's an interesting subject. And, those are the initial things that come to mind.
So jumping just a little bit to the side, I'd love to hear you talk about what intangible qualities make for the best teammates.
Intangible qualities that make the best teammates. Okay, great question. I think first and foremost, just an undying commitment and desire to contribute towards whatever vision is on the table and whatever task is at hand. The desire to learn and understand not just their job or your job, but how every single piece to the puzzle fits together. That's really, really great. And, I think it's one thing that can separate a lot of people from others, because the more perspective you gain on everybody's role in a situation, the more perspective you're going to have on what it is you need to be doing, when and how, first of all. And also, it's going to give you an opportunity to understand where your path might lead. And I think having a little bit of irrational confidence is great, and certainly has done me a lot of service. And anyone, with the sort of approach of, I don't necessarily know exactly how to do this, but I'm going to learn and I'm going to figure it out, and I just want an opportunity, and then being receptive to feedback. That's the biggest one by far. It doesn't matter what you're doing or how you're doing it. I can't tell you how many times part of what we do all the time, every week, is provide each other feedback. And it's not like I'm getting feedback from Phish heads or Dave heads, or I'm getting feedback from 30-year radio veterans, and you know what I mean? Hip hop producers and hosts on, the metal station. It's just a constant flow of conversation, and being able to really take that feedback to heart, not take it personally, and try to incorporate it and help it make you better is the biggest thing. And sitting down, even if someone's on your team, getting feedback from someone, you got to know how, what it looks like on the other side of the mirror, or else if you're not really willing to sit there and assess that, then you're not going to grow as fast.
Mm. Yeah, and taking feedback can be difficult, but giving feedback also, there's a right way to do that.
There is. It's true, but I think it's more valuable to be able to take some feedback that's not given in the best possible way than to, learn how to give feedback in like the perfect way for someone to hear. Like ultimately, and maybe it's just like the environment that I'm in, but the better I got at feedback, and this is later in my career, the better I got at accepting feedback, no matter what the context is, no matter if it's somebody yelling at me about something I messed up or otherwise, like the quicker I evolved. And so removing like your feelings from that is really hard, and it's not easy, and it's not something that I'm even great at now, but I'm better at it, and it has served me incredibly.
Mm. I love that. Well, this has been awesome. Got a few more questions here. Thanks again, though, man.
Of course. I love what you're doing, man. These are really thoughtful questions and super interesting to dive in with you. And I love who you're talking to as well.
Thank you.
All the other people that have been on the show.
Yes. Yes, I love them too. So, a lot of people who listen to this are up and coming artists themselves. And I think it'd be awesome to hear from you. I know you don't have all the answers, but like what business advice might you give like a friend or an up and coming musician looking to really make a career out of it?
Okay. Let's see. I mean, a lot of it depends on what kind of music it is, what style, what genre, what the scene is. I mean, the first thing would be to learn the landscape, understand, not just like understand which bands are doing what, but like really know, like learn all of the players that relate to or that touch the sphere that you're looking to evolve in. And then try to, get comfortable utilizing as many tools at your disposal as possible, be it social media, be it recording and production, whether it's busking on the street. It doesn't matter what those things are. Try to be as comfortable in as many different scenarios as you possibly can. Use the tools that you have. Study the paths of the people that you respect in that world and try to like glean some knowledge from their paths, also understanding that it's never going to be exactly like that, and that you're taking things from those learnings that you can apply in your own individual unique way. Not to say that you're going to bite that exact roadmap or that you're going to follow it or whatever. And put yourself in as many uncomfortable positions as you possibly can, and really just say yes to everything all the time, no matter what, even if it seems like a whack gig, even if it seems like a studio session that you're just not going to be that psyched on. If you're not doing anything at that moment and somebody wants to, you know what I mean? You have an opportunity, like you could do nothing or you could give something a shot, and it doesn't have to go anywhere. But at the same time, like saying no in the beginning is kind of silly to me. And, just learn as much about the business side of it as possible and understand the paths that the people that you respect have taken and where, there's a career to be made and how. And it's not easy. Trust me. I know it's not easy. There's so many talented artists that, don't earn enough and don't, at least to my ears for, the talent that they have, like aren't, necessarily like as financially successful as one might imagine or that I would want, but like there's a whole huge portion of what goes into making a career out of music that's not the art that you're making. It's how you're presenting it and who you're presenting it to and where you're presenting it and all these different things that it really does require a well-rounded understanding of the whole picture that's beyond making music and recording it and producing it.
It's a long road.
It is. And you know what? It's never going to end. I mean, it's a lifetime of like just trying to evolve and get better. And sometimes the finance like the financials and making money just doesn't necessarily happen for a whole host of reasons. But like, don't make that the thing that you're chasing. If that's what you're chasing, you better be really, really attentive to the business side of it, and like go to law school and get an accounting degree and you make your own deals and book your own shows. I could go on and on and on. It's like, make the art making the thing, and then try to learn as much as you can along the way, and you're going to be able to make art, and you're going to be able to do it no matter what. So like, if you release yourself from those shackles of like, I want to make it a career and I have to make X amount, and how am I going to do it, and you get rid of all that. Like, just try to learn as much as you can. That would be the thing that I would say. And work with people that you love. Work with people that you love and who love you and support your vision and who understand where you're trying to go with it and who you respect.
That's a great answer. Well, final question here for you. I'd love to hear you talk about like when you're feeling uninspired, or you wake up and you just dread doing whatever you got to do, or even you're just kind of going through the motions with a little bit of a haze. Like, what kind of shakes you up and revs your engine again?
Such a good question. It happens all the time. I mean, it's honestly like a very constant thing. And there's several things that can kind of shake the cobwebs loose or like ignite that, passion or flame. And not all of them are music based. Some of them, are taking 24 hours and just not looking for new music, or not digging into archival recordings, or not making edits, or not designing, trying to tinker with the database software or whatever else. Some of it's stepping away and really trying to spend quality time with my family and my friends. But then music wise, specific to genres and artists that I'm like diving deep on all the time, for me it's like stepping completely outside of that sonic range and like turning up like a 3 hours of hip hop like that was released in the last 3 weeks, or like Japanese fusion, or like trying to listen to, like trying to get meditative with Sigur Rós for a while, or going like stepping outside of that particular music. The farther I step outside of that particular music, like the more refreshed I am coming back to it. So just trying to like wipe the palette clean, the audio palette clean with other genres is hugely beneficial for me. And it also helps like with what I do at work and have conversations with people that work in other genres and other programmers and hosts, and just have a more well-rounded perspective. Ask, my friends who don't love Phish and Dave, like, but who love music, like get in their ear and like extract whatever they're super excited about and turn that up for an hour and just blast that really loud and step away from what I'm listening to all day. It's a really good reset.
Well, man, thank you for all that you do. I know I speak for a lot of people, playing the hits. Thank you.
I appreciate it, man. It's great to be able to have a conversation with somebody who's passionate and motivated and wants to learn and curious and all those things. And the moth wants to say goodbye or hello. Maybe he's going to take the mic. I don't know.
Well, hell yeah.
Cam, keep fighting the good fight, man, and enjoy the rest of your year. And hopefully we'll catch up again soon. And I'll be listening and watching.
Awesome. Man, thank you again. Take care. Ari Fink, everybody.
Peace, buddy.